Dr. Starmer, now we like to know about your YouTube journey as well. So
Oh yeah.
coming to your YouTube channel, so what was your inspiration behind your YouTube channel? How did you start?
Yeah. So it was a pretty simple way of starting a channel in that obviously I was at University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill working in the genetics department, and it's an academic laboratory environment, which means students are coming and students are going. And when they come, they need to learn a lot of things, some of them more than others. But most of the people in the lab were genetics people. And as such, they did not always have great statistical backgrounds. They had great genetics backgrounds, which is why we wanted them. But it's also, at least in genetics, it's important to also have some statistical background.
Statistics.
I was teaching people statistics, and my motivation for just teaching my coworkers statistics was a couple of things. One is just like computing and music. I'm really passionate about statistics. Statistics is sort of a magical field to me, in that, when we grow up and we take normal math classes, everything is math. We learn sort of like math is it's hard to describe. Math is almost like a pure thing that happens in
In the
like
universe.
in the heavens, right? It's like you could say, 1 + 1 = 2, and it always equals 2, and that 2 is the same for all time and eternity, and it never changes. It's always just 2. And that's great, and that kind of makes sense because we were brought up to believe that 1 + 1 = 2. Like, it's obvious, right? We have 1, which is this eternal concept, plus another eternal concept equals this eternal concept that's twice as big. But in life and reality, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. Say like someone gave me 2 French fries. Would those 2 French fries weigh the same as 2 other French fries? Would they be the same size? Would they be just as salty and fresh? Would they be, some guy might give me little tiny pieces of French fries. It's like
Yeah.
that 2 of 2 French fries is different every time someone gives me 2 French fries. If I said, hey, can you cut me off half a meter of string, and someone else gives me half a meter of string, and I put those 2 together and I measured the full length, would it be exactly a meter? No, it might be a little bit more, it might be a little less, right? And every time I do this, I'm going to get different things. So life is not the math we were taught. Reality is very different. 1 + 1 doesn't always equal the exact same 2 as we thought we were getting. And statistics is the only thing I know actually tries to deal with that. And not only does it try to deal with it, it tries to make a strength out of it. How do you make decisions in a world where everything's different? If every time I get 2 French fries, how do I make a decision? Every time I get 2 French fries, it's a different 2 French fries, and it means I get a different amount of potato each time. How do I make decisions as to who am I going to ask for French fries? I'm going to look at the variation in each person's French fries that they give me, and I'm going to try to make decisions based on the reality of the situation. And statistics is sort of magical that way. And it's something that I know it's kind of weird when you start teaching statistics, because it comes from the perspective of, oh, it's kind of like math, but it's fundamentally different than math, in that math, everything is constant all the time for all of eternity, whereas in statistics, everything's different all the time for all of eternity. And statistics is how do you cope with that variation, and how do you use it to your advantage to make good decisions. And so long story short, I'm very passionate about statistics, and I even have a YouTube channel called StatQuest because I'm so excited about statistics. So I'm passionate about it, and I wanted to share my passion with things. Just like as a musician, I wanted to share my passion for music by playing music for other people. I want to, as a statistician, I want to share my passion for statistics by teaching other people statistics. But it's also, that's just one major component. But the other component is when we work with people that are not familiar with statistics and they didn't grow up loving statistics, and maybe they took a horrible statistics class at some point and they just think it's the most evil thing ever. One thing that I've tried to do in terms of teaching statistics is I use it as a tool to gain trust between me and the scientific researchers, between me and the geneticists, between me and the people that are, actually collecting the data. If they're doing the experiments, they collect the data, they give it to me, I do some statistical magic on it. How do they know they can trust that I've done the right thing? When they don't even understand half of it. And so part of what what I was trying to do originally was share my enthusiasm, but also establish trust that what I was doing was reasonable. It wasn't magic, and the results are understandable and comprehensible, and that they can trust me to do a good job with the data that they worked so hard and spent so much money trying to gather. I made this is like a really long story. Sorry, sorry, it's going so long.
I can see the passion for statistics.
Exactly. But you know what I'm trying to say is, so I was like, well, how do so what I was doing in order to share my passion and establish trust with my coworkers was I was creating these little, like, once every Friday, little informal seminars on statistics. But going back to where I was talking about how it's an academic lab with new people coming and going all the time, it was like, do I have to teach these little informal seminars every 6 months whenever a new person joins the lab? Or what I can do, because they were just PowerPoint presentations, I could just like make a YouTube video from my thing. And then when someone new comes, they have this library of videos that they can refer to when they need to. And what I loved about this idea was people learned concepts like linear regression or R squared. They would learn those concepts when I had time to teach them, not when they needed to know them. And so another cool thing about doing stuff on YouTube was it solved two problems. One is it prevented me from having to give the same seminar every 6 months. So it made me be a little lazier, which I thought was fantastic. And then the other thing is it allowed the new students to learn not when I had time, but when they needed to know. Like when they're reading exactly. When they're reading some manuscript and it's like, and the R squared was this and the p-value was that, they're like, what the heck are those two things? They could then watch my videos and learn when they needed to, because it could be like I teach something and then it's not, they don't actually use that concept for another 2 years, or they may never use that concept. Instead, it's like they learn what they need to learn when they need to learn it. When it's, it's all on YouTube. So I was like super excited about YouTube early on. And those were my goals, was to create something so I didn't have to teach the same thing every 6 months, and also create something so that other people, they could learn when they needed to. And as a result, it worked. In the first year, I had 9 views, which meant 9 people from my lab, because as far as I could tell, those are the only people who knew that my videos existed. 9 people from my lab watched my videos, which was the whole point, right? Was for them to watch them and so I was like immediately successful and super pleased that my efforts had paid off with my 9 views. It was not for another year or so that other people started watching my videos. And if you watch my early videos, you'll notice that all of the examples are given in the context of mouse genetics. And that's because I was specifically trying to but communicate to my coworkers. And it was only later on that once it started catching on that I was like, I should probably try to address a broader audience and not just a relatively small sliver of mouse geneticists. And so that was a little learning curve for me, because I wasn't expecting it to be something beyond what my coworkers are going to be watching. It was sort of a pleasant surprise that other people were able to learn something from it as well.